The Kia Niro EV is a great way to get yourself into an electric at an affordable price while having a vehicle that's still eligible for the Canada and US EV incentives. One thing that sets the Niro Electric apart from other electric vehicles is that this thing is front-wheel drive standard versus the traditional rear-wheel drive you're going to find in a number of other electrics for their entry-level trims. But the downside, though, is that the Niro is not available all-wheel drive. So if you do want all-wheel drive, you'd have to bump yourself up to the EV6. I have done a compare video looking at the Niro versus the EV6. So if you want to see that one, you'll find it down in the description of the video. It's just that, like, if you live in snowy climates, having the option to be front-wheel drive rather than rear-wheel is just infinitely better. All-wheel drive is a step above, but I'd rather be front-wheel than rear-wheel drive in the wintertime, hands down. There are a few different style lamps you're going to find inside of the Niro EV, with LED headlamps being standard in the Wave, so the highest trim level of the vehicle. And there are a lot of other great features you're going to find in that higher trim. One of them is going to be a forward sensing system, which is not available in the wind trim levels whatsoever, so no packages that you can add on to get that. But the overall styling in the front end here, it's so Kia, like especially if you look at something like the Seltos, which the front end here does definitely remind me of. This cityscape green is pretty neat though. And all of the different highlights like the black bezels, lower part of the bumper, and then all of the different metallic highlights, pops, it looks nice. The front end has a little texture there, and then there's also the charge door right in the very middle. The Niro does support level 1, level 2, and level 3 DC supercharging. It does come with a 20-foot cable right from the factory when you purchase, but the downside is that it's strictly a level 1 charge cable. So I think you're maxing out at like 57 hours for level 1 charging, which, I mean, if you're only driving like 10, 20, 30 kilometers a day, you could definitely get away with level 1. But if you're putting on like 100, 150 kilometers a day, you're absolutely going to want to look at a level 2 instead. Because looking at level 2, depending on your voltage, you're anywhere between 6 and 9 hours roughly to go from 0 to 100. So definitely recommend that route if this thing is a daily driver and you're putting on substantial kilometers or mileage on your vehicle. In the front end, if you look just between the I and the A in Kia, there is a little release. And this thing is on hydraulics. But underneath the hood of electrics, there's not really much. I like the way that Kia's designed it, so it's almost like a traditional internal combustion engine instead. You can easily top up your basic fluids there. There is a tiny little frunk. Nothing crazy, but if you need a tiny little bit of storage space for the front end, it is available there. Inside of the Niro, you're going to find a 64.8 kilowatt hour battery, and that translates to 201 horsepower and 188 pound-feet of torque, which is pretty respectable. The EV6 is definitely going to kick that up a notch, but you're also looking at paying a premium price in comparison. Looking at the overall range inside of the Niro EV, when you're fully charged up, you're 407 kilometers or 253 miles, which is pretty respectable. You will lose a tiny little bit of your total range in the wintertime, but there are different ways that you can set your vehicle up in order to optimize for winter performance as well, like preconditioning your cabin, things like that. There's not much that you have to do inside of electrics for maintenance. You obviously want to make sure you top up your fluids, brake servicing, and things like that. There are still regularly scheduled maintenance intervals you have to follow. Definitely recommend you do because you want to make sure that you maintain your manufacturer's warranty, which inside of the Kia world is pretty good. The rear end styling of the Niro is pretty neat. You're looking at some unique lamps. There's a tiny little spoiler, and then you're always going to have the rear wiper, backup camera, and the reverse sensing system standard inside the vehicle. Now, one thing, this actually went through a touchless car wash before I shot the video. So as you can see there, all sorts of dirt right underneath where the spoiler is. So it's, I guess, a downside of the touchless car wash is that it's not going to hit this top part. Getting into the trunk of the vehicle, you can do a few different ways. Power liftgate is going to be available. You've got Kia's smart liftgate, which I love that smart liftgate feature. You walk a few feet away for like 10 to 15 seconds, and then you come back to the vehicle and it's automatically going to raise up for you. There's a button just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel, and then underneath the I and the A in Kia, you can push there in order to raise this thing up. And the Niro by itself in just the cargo area has a pretty good amount of space to it, but there's not too much feature-wise back here. Nothing off to the left, except for like some hooks for cargo nets, and then off to the right, there's just a little light there. Now, one nice thing about the Niro is that the little carpeted area back here, so the storage tray, You can pull this thing out and you can slide it down to create a little bit more cargo space. So that is available if you need it. One downside to the Niro is that you are looking at strictly the tire inflator kit. So the goop and the inflator kit. So if you pop a tire, you're gonna have to call Kia roadside assistance. But if you just puncture one, you could seal it up until you can get to the next point if you're able to. Folding down the second row bench is straightforward, and you could reach it from the cargo area. Just right along the top, you're gonna push, and down the seat goes. And when you do that, there is a great amount of space in the cargo area of the vehicle. Now, the measurements that I use are going under the assumption that it's from where the door would shut to just behind the armrest or the console in the first row. So if your seats are forward because you're shorter, they're further back because you're taller, you're gonna lose or gain a couple inches there. But overall spacing in this is good. And like I said, I love that you've got a multi-tiered storage solution. Now, if you don't need to get into the cargo area of the vehicle, you could go through the second door, and right along the top, you're just gonna pull and fold down. Now, some Kia vehicles, when you fold down the second row seat, they're locked in place. That's not the way with the Niro, so it's easy to lift them up and then close them down again. The side view mirrors do have turn signals there, along with the blind spot monitoring system. So if somebody's into the blind spot on either side of the vehicle, it's gonna highlight there to let you know. The doors, there is intelligent access, so you can push there in order to lock the door, or push in order to unlock. Beautiful. Along the side door there, it's very basic. Just your basic handle, all of your side view mirror controls, your window control. It's this nice glossy highlight though. Just matches nicely with what's going on inside the vehicle. But a little bit of door storage. There's also a speaker there too. We'll touch on speakers in a second. Just inside, that glossy highlight follows through part of the dash as well. You can increase or decrease the brightness of the cluster screen, open or close the liftgate, and then toggle traction control on or off. In order to get underneath the hood, giving yourself a pull there. Basic fuse panel, so if you're wiring a dash cam, things like that. Manual telescoping steering wheel, and then you've got your leatherette seat. The seats inside of this thing might be manual or power, depending on the trim level of the vehicle that you're in. So you can go forwards, backwards, up and down with it. There's two-way lumbar support. Two-way lumbar support, and then there's also the option of adjusting your backrest there as well. Straightforward. The interior of the Niro is nice, it's simple, and there's a boatload of space in this thing too. Like the seat as far down and as far back as it's gonna go, the seat is ridiculous. It goes so far back. But if you're like probably 6'6", you'll probably comfortably be able to sit inside of this vehicle. It's good, I love it. Power seats are great. I do like that there is the option for heated and ventilated first row seats. The heated seats pretty much available across the board, but the ventilated first row strictly going to be for that higher trim of the vehicle. And that's the same way with some other technology. Like there was an available head-up display on top of that, which this one unfortunately doesn't have. But when I'm in a Niro with a head-up display, I'll drop a link down in the description walking through how to be able to use it. It's the same across every other Kia vehicle. So I actually have done one on the EV6 that had a head-up display. So if you want to walk through and how that works, I will drop it in the description. But seat comfort's there. The headrest, just a two-way adjustable. So it's just up and down. There's no forward, backward for it whatsoever. Still, it's pretty nice. Beautiful. Nice, simple startup there. Steering wheel inside of the Niro is nice. There's the option for a heated steering wheel, so you can toggle it on just down the center stack there. But if you want a full walkthrough, like you want to know how to use the different buttons, go through the cluster screen or the infotainment, you'll find that walkthrough down in the description of this video. But some basics here. The buttons on the outside, so those are going to be for your adaptive cruise control system or your smart cruise. This is going to be a lane centering button, so it's going to keep you perfectly balanced in your lane as you drive. So very, very smart system there. Along this side, voice command prompt to be able to change songs, radio stations, navigate using your voice and things like that. There are so many things that you can do with this vehicle. So adjust climate control settings and things like that. I definitely recommend spending a few minutes to get used to that because it is a very useful system once you do. Down below, there's a drive mode button, and that's going to give you the flexibility of going between either eco, normal, or sport. And then you can do a press and hold in order to go into a snowy mode instead. So all of these modes do something different, like play with your traction stability control, your shift points, and things like that. Very straightforward. You can use the little pages button to go through a few different options there too. Very straightforward. This thing does have the option for one pedal driving. So there you go. So you see the I pedal there, which means that you can essentially just use the accelerator. You take your foot off and it's going to brake very, very rapidly. You can toggle it off that way too if you'd like to. Stick on this side is to figure out what's going on with your lamps. Just recommend keeping yourself in the auto mode. And this one is to turn on your front wipers, or button on the tip of that stick for your rear wiper there instead. I like the digital cluster screen inside of this, and then moving over to the infotainment. Beautiful, beautiful. But this thing does have factory navigation. Good, it's nice pinch to zoom capabilities as well. There's an EV mode there, which gives you a ton of options. So you've got next departure. Big benefit there is you can set up the dates and times that you typically go. So let's say you have Monday to Friday. You tend to leave at 8 o'clock a.m. You can set it this way. So what'll happen is when you depart, your charging and climate are going to be activated. So what's going to happen is it's going to precondition the cabin. Very, very useful if you don't want to just be wasting electric miles by just having your vehicle preconditioned. So you can plug in, set what time you're going to turn, what time you're going to go, and then you can toggle on or off your charging and your climate. Very useful. But like I said, if you want a full walkthrough there, you'll find it down in the description of the video. This thing does support Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. It's a wired connection though, so you're going to have to go through USB in order to be able to plug in. You can only use this power point as well in order to be able to use the data connection. So this is strictly a charge port. So if you wanted to connect through Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, you need a typical USB Type A connector. This is good. There are tons of different options too for media. So if you go to, even if you go just radio, like I love the basic radio styling there. Beautiful. So you've got AM, FM, Sirius XM, and there are so many different options. Like if you go into media, AM, FM, Sirius XM, sounds of nature, so those ambient noises instead. And if you've got a USB stick with MP3s, you could also use it. But there's one thing. I definitely recommend going through your sound settings, dropping the treble down by 2 and cranking the bass by 3. That's generally going to give you really good audio inside of most vehicles, and this one as well. So USB, you're just plugging yourself in. It's most likely going to autoplay. So this is just coming right out of the microphone. There's no processing done afterwards at all.
Today's gonna be a good day. Set your affirmations, aspirations. I got shit to do, the aftermath of preparation. Good food, good mood, blood and sick.
Okay, so initially I was up to about half volume, and then I got about 3/4 of the way there. So the bass sound system inside of it is pretty good, but it definitely gets better when you get to that higher trim level of the vehicle. But still, that was pretty respectable for what it was. This is kind of like a little button press to go between either climate settings, or you can go between some basic vehicle settings there too. I kind of like the way that Kia's designed this, because you've got rockers there, which are either going to be for your climate, or it's going to be for volume and tuning and things like that. It's pretty neat. Moving down, got a 12-volt power point there, a USB, which is going to be your data port for connecting Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, or for charging, and then just a charge port. If you've got a phone that supports wireless charging, it is there. You've got your little power button, heated first row seats available in pretty much every trim, with the option for ventilated first row seats when you get into the wave trim level of the vehicle. So the highest trim will have ventilated first row. Button for heated steering wheel. Auto hold is a neat one, because with the auto hold setting turned on, if you are in drive, take your foot off the brake, vehicle's not moving. So it's a very good safety setting. The park sensing system, so that beeping that you get as you back up, if that drives you nuts, you can toggle it off. There is your basic camera there on top of that. So you've got your front view, and then if you're kind of backing up, you've also got that like lower hitch view instead. Like the little rotary shifter, reverse, neutral, drive, into park very simply. The parking brake inside of this is an electronic. You've got a few cup holders, which, love it. Used to play with that all the time when I was a kid. So good. And then this little armrest, easy to lift up, and then there's really nothing down there. It's a decent amount of storage space. But I like the little cup holders there, because you can kind of set your larger bottle up if you've got one. Really useful. I like it. There's a tiny little highlight along that part of the dash there. A little glove box that is fully unlocked, so non-lockable at all. Nothing out to that side in the passenger. or the driver. Shooting up overhead, you're going to find a manual dimming rearview mirror in the lower trims with the option for an auto dimming instead in the higher. Your basic towing and SOS mode if you need help. Cabin control lights, and then there would also be controls for the little sunroof if you were in a Niro that did have the roof available. It's not a full panoramic, but you still would have a roof, which is nice. Visor in this thing, typical Kia styling, so your light's just over top. Vanity mirror built in, and this thing extends out, blocking all of the sun that might be hitting your face. There's also a little assist handle over top there. So hold on, with me being 6 feet tall and having the seat set up this way, inside of the second row, I've got a great amount of foot space, great amount of knee space, and up overhead, like 3.5 inches of head space. So there is fully functional, usable space inside of the second row of the Niro. It's pretty good. Fitting 3 full-size adults back here, a little bit tight, especially for whoever's stuck in this middle seat. But one nice thing is that there's no hump in the middle, so there's still plenty of foot space there. I mean, obviously, if you have the seats back, it'll get a little bit tight. In this middle seat, definitely not very comfortable whatsoever, but you've got a good amount of cushion when you get to the outboard seats of the Niro. Behind the first row, you've got pockets on the driver and on the passenger side. And one thing I like about Kia, little USB Type-C power points. That's going to be the same on the driver passenger side, and it's strictly for power, so you're not looking at being able to plug in peripherals and things like that. There's nothing behind the armrest there. The driver's side, you've got just your basic window control, but there would be the option for heated second row seats when you're in the wave trim level of the vehicle as well. Nothing really crazy along the door there. Up overhead, you've got a little handle with a little hook on the driver. And then passenger is just going to be the handle, so no hook there. Little light control up overhead. And then in the seats, we've got a few basic cup holders there, built right in, and then all of the anchor points, and then the top tether points as well. So if you've got front-facing, rear-facing child seats, they will fit inside of this vehicle. Oh, I love electric cars. Just the pure amount of power that's in them. It is so, so good. It's like you need to get in front of anybody and you just put your foot down and you are going. And like this thing, like the power in it is pretty respectable. Like 201 horsepower, not really much to balk at. It's pretty impressive. Oh, I love that. So good. That's one thing that I really love about electrics, is that it's instant torque. I know with electric range, some people have range anxiety, but I think for the majority of people, like unless you're traveling like crazy, like the Niro EV, you're sitting at around 407 kilometer range, like 253 miles, which, I mean, that is pretty respectable. And I think for most people, that'll probably be good enough. So it's like, how far do you travel? That's the question that you've got to ask. Like if you're traveling far, if you're traveling a couple hundred kilometers a day, yeah, if you're going to road trip, I would say that's really the only time you're looking at a downside, is that if you're the type of person where you road trip all the time, because you road trip in an electric, and like as an example, I did a road trip out to the East Coast, that's 1,700 kilometers. And I did that trip in 2 days. So it's like I would have had to stop once, at least twice per day in order to be able to get there. That's like the one downside. So if you tend to go on lots of road trips, there's a downside to the electric, but I mean, obviously the positive is that you're saving money on gas. Yeah, there's a cost of charging and things like that. So there are little things that you really have to look into when you figure out if it makes sense to go for an electric or if it makes sense to stick with internal combustion. But this is good. Nice driving dynamics. Gonna kind of play with it a little bit, go left, right here. I mean, that's pretty damn good. I'm like a 0, hold on. This one's got a bunch of kilometers on it, so I don't mind doing this right now. 0 to Canadian 60 in a few seconds there. That's fun though. That is fun. I'll give you that. I'll give you that, Kia. Just love the electric power. I love, honestly, like I'm really liking the one pedal driving more and more. It's like the more I use it, the more and more I like it. It's a really, really great system. But Oh, electric power! It's so much fun. Like you put your foot down and you are going. Oh, that's good. Smile on my face. I'm like a child. It's great. Durham Kia out here in Oshawa, nice enough to lend this thing to me for the afternoon in order to shoot the video for you guys. So if you're after any Kia vehicle, whether that's an electric, gas, whatever the case may be, you definitely want to chat with Durham Kia. They've got you covered there. And that was the Kia Niro EV. You can find a build link for this specific one down in the description, along with the contact details for Durham Kia and all the tech walkthrough videos. But if you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and until I see you next time, take care.